لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. يقول سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بعد أن أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. اللهم اجعلنا من الصابرين آمين يا رب العالمين. First and foremost, as always, I make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I find you all in good health and iman. And simultaneously, from asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I ask Him to give me the strength that I speak with you and speak in front of you with confidence and clarity. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. And it's no secret these past few weeks, for this Muslim ummah, for this Muslim nation, it's been very, very difficult as to all the things that are happening in the world, particularly what's happening in Gaza. And then something a bit closer to home, in regards to our community, one of our members, Sayyid Kabir, a few weeks ago passed away. And I cannot imagine what that family is going through. So I make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives his wife and his children patience and strength, and gives them strength that they get through this difficult time. And normally, when we go through difficult times, or something bad happens to us, we start to ask, Ya Allah, why does this keep happening to us? And if our mindset and our understanding of this concept is not correct, we can get even more confused. So I start with the first scenario as to why bad things happen to us. Is it something that truly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala controls, or do we have a hand in it? So I give you the first scenario. For instance, for those kids who are in elementary school, junior high, high school, colleges, if you have a tendency of failing your test, and it's because you only studied the night before, you shouldn't be shocked. Or a person who keeps losing his job because he never shows up to work on time and is always the first one to leave. And whatever assignments and projects are given to him, and if he loses his job, he shouldn't say, Ya Allah, why are you testing me? That's not on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's on you. Or if someone who's committed to eating halwa and ice cream, and all of a sudden he goes for a doctor's checkup and say, hey, you have diabetes. Don't say, Ya Allah, why are you testing me? That's on you, because you didn't control your diet. Or if someone who's committed to smoking, and you go for your doctor's checkup and he says you have lung cancer, that's not because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's because of your actions. Matter of fact, the believers in the battle of Uhud, when something bad happened, and the Muslims were in a difficult situation, after the battle, the believers went to the Prophet ﷺ and said, why is Allah doing this to us? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet of Allah, say this, it wasn't because of me, it was because of you. The Prophet of Allah told you not to leave your post, you left your post. And because of that, the enemy saw an opening and they attacked you. So there are certain things that we can control. Certain things that are in our hands. And then there's the second scenario. The scenario where there's a whole ayah in the Quran, ظَهَرَ الْفَسَادُ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ. Everything in the skies and everything in the earth is a reflection of our actions. You know, there's a saying, every action has a reaction. And in the past month of Ramadan, we felt it. And when we were praying salah, we felt something good. When we were reading Quran, we felt something good. But when we use that concept, that theory in mind, and if something bad happens to someone, we don't start blaming them. We don't say, hey, you know, something bad happened to you because you don't pray 5 times a day. That's very insensitive. It's true, every action has a reaction, but there's a way about going about it. You know, Islam, the beautiful thing about Islam is that it gives us the ability to self-reflect. When we hear a good talk or when we hear the ayahs of the Holy Quran, and me, myself, if I'm the last person I'm thinking about, then there's an issue. For instance, you know, between husbands and wives, it's something common. You know, husbands blame their wives. If something bad happens to their wives, they say, you know, that happened because you didn't listen to me. The wives say the same thing. You know, you lost your job because you don't treat me well. Or the children, subhanAllah, parents use this all the time. They might not know any ayah of the Quran, but they know وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. You better be good to your parents. You better be good to your parents. Alhamdulillah, my mom's favorite hadith is that when a companion asked the Prophet of Allah, who should I respect more, my father or my mother? And what did the Prophet of Allah say? You should respect your mother how many times? 3 times. And whenever my mom hears that hadith, she says, Junaid, how many times? 3 times. So massage my feet. SubhanAllah. It's something that we have to do. But these hadiths and this Quran, it's not for us to attack each other. It's there for us to self-reflect. If we're the last people, the last person we're thinking about, then there's an internal issue. Then the last scenario. The scenario is that you're particular about your salah. You're an honest person. You do good deeds and you encourage people to do good. But then something still bad happens. You know, a lot of us, each of us have different scenarios and situations that it would be hard for me to swallow. You know, for instance, no parent should outlive their children. No parent should. It's a very difficult situation when parents are losing their kids when they're 6 and 7 years old. I wouldn't want to know what they're going through. Or a daughter who loses her father. Every daughter has the right that her father should attend her wedding. They have that right. Or every son should have that right when he has a child, he gets his first job, that her parents are there with him, celebrating. But sometimes we're tested in different ways. Or in Palestine, you know, people are getting kicked out of their house. They're getting kicked out of their land who are indigenous to the land. But why does this keep happening? You know, we need to understand this word in the Quran. It says musiba. In Urdu, Hindi, maybe Farsi, we think we know what it means. Musiba means worriness. No. Musiba derives from another word, Arabic word, which means asaba. Asaba means it's something that hit its target. For instance, when an arrow hits its target, musiba means there was a particular difficulty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made just for you, and it hits its target. It hits it. But why? Why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala testing us? Why do we have to go through these difficulties? You know, sometimes when we start comparing our situations, why does that person not getting tested and why do I keep getting tested? There's this theory that if you bring 10 people together and put them in a circle, and if you can see each of their problems, each person will pick up their own problems and say, you know what? Your difficulties are too hard for me to bear. Because each of our problems are made specifically for us, and there's a specific reason why those problems are there. And it's based down to one emotion: patience. Patience. And probably a lot of you are thinking, why? Why patience? You know the ayahs that I read, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Congratulate those who have patience. And when you think about it, why would you congratulate someone who's going through difficulty? If someone lost their job, you don't say, hey, congratulations, you lost your job. Hey, congratulations, you're sick. MashaAllah, you made it to the ER room, that's awesome. You don't do that. But it's being done for a specific reason. It's being told to the Prophet ﷺ that you congratulate those people who show patience on the day of Qiyamah. Subhanallah. You know, there's something special when your teacher congratulates you. There's something special when your parents congratulate you. And then there's something special when the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he congratulates you. Why? You know, there's always a reflex. You know, when you go to the doctor's office and they hit your knee and your knee goes up, then there's also a reflex when something bad happens to you. Are you that person who always has the tendency, Ya Allah, out of all of these people in the world, why did you select me? It's just me. You're always picking on me. Or do you have that tendency? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He describes. He says, الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ. When those patient people, when a difficulty, a calamity befalls them, what do they say? What do they say? قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ. What do they say? They say, we all belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We all belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that goes to show you, you know, sometimes when we see our children and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes our children away. For those of us who have really amazing jobs and all of a sudden your manager comes in and says, hey, guess what? You're fired. When we say this ayah, قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ, that no doubt about it, we all belong to Allah. Our homes, our children, our wives, everything, that all belongs to Allah. That never belonged to us. They were all in imanah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, a few years ago when I was studying abroad, a good friend of mine, he passed away in a car accident. Very talented guy. Very talented guy. And after a few weeks, I built up the nerves to call his mother. And I said, Auntie, I feel really bad that Imran Ahmed passed away. And she said something interesting, subhanAllah. She said, Junaid, he never belonged to me. Subhanallah. You know, sometimes we think, you know, this is our house and this is our wealth and this is our children. These are our parents. Wallahi, they're all a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're all an imanah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He could take it whenever He wants, from whomever He wants. Don't ever think when you got married that it was mandatory for you to have children. It was never so. It was all a favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you got an MBA from Harvard or UCLA, don't think it was your right to get that prestigious job. No, it was a favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. And we will all return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We all belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we will all return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does that tell us? Whatever situation you're going through, whatever difficulty you're going through, it's all momentary. If you're happy, it's limited. If you're going through difficulties, it's limited. Everything in this world is limited. And that inshallah ta'ala, those difficulties that you're going through, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will reward you. But then the question arises, brother, you know what's happening in Gaza and Iraq and all this and etc. etc. We read these surahs every day in salah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. All praises and gratitude is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. He is the most merciful, the most kind. Maliki Yawmiddin. He is the master, the owner of the day of judgment. You know, sometimes people do really bad things to other people and you can never justify it. How do you justify Hitler killing so many people? Even if you kill them 1,000,000 times, you can't justify it. On the day of judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the most just. You think all of those children are dying in Gaza and no one will be accountable for it? No, you will. We will all be accountable for what we do. All those people who oppress other people, they will be accountable for what they do. They will be. But it's a matter of belief. Maliki Yawmiddin, on the Day of Judgment, He is the master, the owner of the Day of Judgment. Meaning that, today I can say this is my blue denim shirt, and that's my beat up Dodge Caravan outside. But on the Day of Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns me and each of my actions. And on that day, we will all be accountable. So I make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever difficulties that we're going through, that we never lose hope. The goal of these difficulties that we go through was never to gain worldly possession. It was only to gain patience. And I make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes us amongst those who are patient, and that on the Day of Qiyamah, that the Prophet of Allah is congratulating us that we are amongst the patients. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. اللهم صل على محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. أقم الصلاة.